A while back, I made a video comparing the Nissan Rogue against the Mazda CX-5. But those cars were 2021 model years, and in this video, they're both 2022 model years. More importantly, they both have had quite a few upgrades since then. Mind you, one of them is much bigger than the other one, and we'll get to that in a bit. But in the previous video, I said that the Mazda CX-5 was still the SUV to get. So in this video, do I still come to the same conclusion? Let's go for a drive and find out. Let's start things off in the Nissan because, in my opinion, it has had the biggest change between both of these compact SUVs for the 2022 model year. It has a brand new engine under the hood. It is a 1.5 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder, and it produces 201 horsepower and 225 pound-feet of torque. I should point out that for the Canadian market, you can still get that old 2.5 liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine, but it's only in the base Rogue S trim. For the United States, you don't have that engine anymore. All trim levels come with this new 1.5 liter 3-cylinder. Getting back to this 3-cylinder engine, it is a far better motor than the old 2.5 4-cylinder. Not only does it have more power and more torque, but it's much more usable. With the old motor, it felt like as though the Rogue took literally an eternity to get up to any sort of speed, whether it's setting off from a stoplight or merging onto a highway. With this new engine, it feels much more effortless. Even though this Rogue Platinum with all-wheel drive weighs almost 1.7 tons, this little motor has plenty of grunt to get this SUV going. This 3-cylinder turbo engine utilizes Nissan's variable compression technology. This was first introduced on the Infiniti QX50, and without getting into too much detail, the combustion chamber can change the compression ratio. Under light throttle applications, it has higher compression for improved fuel efficiency. Vice versa when you stomp on the throttle and the turbo produces more boost. The compression ratio decreases to allow for a larger volume of air-fuel mixture for more power. You don't feel any of this change as it is seamless, but you can see it happening on the digital driver display. With this engine being so small, it's also pretty fuel efficient. The Rogue with the all-wheel drive system is rated for 8.4 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 6.8 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. Helping to achieve those fuel economy numbers is a CVT automatic transmission. Now I know this isn't the most engaging or the best transmission on the market right now, but honestly, this is a very forgetful transmission, and I mean that in the best way possible. I don't want to bash it because it does its job really well. If you stab on the throttle, then it reacts quickly enough. On highways, it keeps the engine's RPMs really low, so you get that fuel economy, the highway fuel economy target, I should say. And if you do want to play around with it a little bit, then you can use the steering wheel mounted paddle shifters and it'll give you a few virtual gears to fool around with. So honestly, if you just let the transmission do its own thing, then like I said, it's very forgetful. In the Mazda CX-5, you have two powertrains to choose from. You can either get a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, in which case it'll develop 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. Or you can get a 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, which is what I have here. On regular fuel, this engine produces 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. Pretty good. However, if you decide to use premium fuel, then it'll develop 256 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. With that much power and that much torque, both Motor Trend and Car and Driver tested the CX-5 Turbo, and it managed a 0 to 60 time of 6.1 seconds. That's fast enough to put some sports cars to shame, never mind other crossover SUVs. For the 2022 model year, it gets those extra 6 horsepower. Interestingly, if you use regular fuel, the engine's peak torque figure is reached at 500 RPMs lower than if you were to use premium fuel. Now with this turbo engine, the car feels very lively. So every time that you put your foot down, of course the transmission is going to downshift, but even if you don't let it downshift, then it'll just accelerate immediately. There's hardly any turbo lag. Speaking of the transmission, the Mazda CX-5 still uses a 6-speed automatic. While other manufacturers have added more and more gears, Mazda chose to refine their 6-speed automatic. This is by far the best 6-speed auto on the market. But you know what? Even though this transmission only has 6 gears to play around with, they are quick and, more importantly, they are smooth, which is exactly what you want from a family crossover SUV. With the 2.5-liter turbo engine, the 2022 Mazda CX-5 all-wheel drive is rated for 10.8 liters per 100 kilometers in the city and 8.7 liters per 100 kilometers on the highway. I averaged 10.3 liters per 100 kilometers during my time with the CX-5. There are also a few new drive modes for this updated Mazda CX-5. There's a little toggle switch right here next to the gear selector. It's called MI drive. And by default, as soon as you start up the car, it'll be in normal drive mode. But you can also change it to sport or off-road. Now, of course, these do change some of the parameters. For example, the gear points, gear shifting points, I should say, and the throttle response. So you definitely notice a difference between all 3 drive modes. When the roads get twisty, the Mazda CX-5 is still the compact SUV that provides the better driving experience. Sharp and communicative steering provides feedback that you'd find on a sports car, let alone a mid-size SUV. Because of this, the CX-5 gives you the confidence to drive it around corners at higher speeds than other SUVs. As well, in slippery situations, say snow, the all-wheel drive will send more power to the rear wheels and let the back end slide a bit to better rotate the body. If you behave like a hoonigan, this is actually quite a lot of fun for a compact SUV. The Nissan Rogue, on the other hand, doesn't have quite the same sharp and enjoyable driving dynamics. That said, this new generation does drive a lot better than the old one. It feels more planted around corners, and the steering is direct and like as though it's actually connected to the front wheels. It is on the light side, but at least that makes it easier to maneuver around parking lots or city streets. First, looking at the ride comfort of the Nissan Rogue, it is very comfortable. I would even argue that this is the most comfortable ride out of any of these mainstream compact SUVs. The shunts, as you drive over a pothole or a manhole cover, are absorbed very well by the suspension, and it manages to do it in such a way that it doesn't feel too floaty when you're on highways or on undulating roads. Plus, these seats also provide a lot of comfort, whether you're taking long family road trips or just commuting daily. They don't have any pressure points, and I think that for pretty much any body type, they will be very comfortable. In terms of noises in the cabin of the Nissan Rogue, it's really quiet. There isn't a whole lot of noise coming from the engine unless you obviously really put your foot down. And there isn't also a whole lot of noise from the tires when you're cruising on highways. It's a very quiet car, and I like that. The ride quality in the Mazda CX-5 is noticeably firmer than all of its other crossover SUV competitors. Now, by no means is this ride uncomfortably bad. You can still take the CX-5 on long family road trips or commute daily to work, and it's still comfortable, but you definitely notice that the suspension is a little bit more firm than in other compact crossover SUVs. And as for noises inside the cabin, road noise is a little bit evident, especially at higher speeds, but it's not too obtrusive. Wind noise is pretty much negligible, but the one thing that you will hear is engine noise. But unlike in other compact crossover SUVs, I'm actually okay with it because this engine actually sounds really good. It sounds muscular and like as though it actually has power. The Mazda CX-5 has been around in this generation since 2017. It did receive a new infotainment system and a new screen for the 2021 model year, but the design of the interior has remained pretty much the same. This top spec signature has soft leather and wood trim that give the car a slightly more premium feel than its competitors. Back in 2017, that is. 5 years later, and other manufacturers have caught up. It still feels like a premium interior, but just wait until you see the Rogue. As for occupant space, in the front seats there is plenty of it, even for above average height adults like myself. I have no issues with legroom or headroom. The interior of the Nissan Rogue, especially in this top spec platinum trim, is really nice. Dare I say it, even nicer than the signature trim of the Mazda CX-5. I really like this beige/tan leather that's on the seats, on the center console, on the dashboard, and on the door panels. It's a good contrast between it and the rest of the trim pieces. Speaking of which, there is gloss black plastic around the climate controls and around the infotainment screen, but it's not overdone like how it is in, say, some Kia models, where it's literally everywhere. In this one, it's much more subtle, and the rest of the trim pieces are either wood on the dashboard, although it's fake feeling, and scratchy looking plastic on the center console and on the door panels, I should say. I think that this scratchy looking plastic will stand the test of time because it doesn't show fingerprints as easily as gloss black, and it doesn't show scratches, again, as easily as gloss black. So this is a good choice by Nissan. As for space in this new Nissan Rogue, it is a little bit bigger than the previous generation, so for my 6'4" height, I really cannot complain here in the front seats. I just have plenty of space, and I can even move the seat further back if I want more, or even move it up and still have plenty of headroom. In the back, there is still a lot of space for my 6'4" height. Interestingly, the Nissan Rogue, on paper, is supposed to have a little bit less legroom than the Mazda CX-5, but in reality, behind my driving position, it feels like as though it has more space. I'm not complaining, I'm just simply stating an observation. In terms of headroom, my hair isn't brushing up against the headliner, but it feels pretty close. Another bit of information is that the previous generation Rogue had a little bit more headroom than this new generation. As you can clearly see, it does have a panoramic sunroof, but if that's too much light for you, then you do have sunshades on the doors and of course a shade for the sunroof. The outboard seats are heated, and unlike many other compact SUVs, the Nissan Rogue actually has a 3-zone climate control, so the rear passengers can have a different temperature to the ones in the front. Oh, and these seats, they do recline just a little bit. And another great thing about the back is that if you have to load up stuff or to set up a car seat or just to make it easier to get in and out of, the doors open at almost 90 degrees. That's pretty cool. Behind the seats, the Nissan Rogue has 1,028 liters of space with those seats up and 2,064 liters with the rear seats folded. Where the Mazda CX-5 lags behind its competitors is cargo volume. With the rear seats up, it can only accommodate 871 liters of space. It's the same story when folding the back seats down. The CX-5 only has enough room for 1,680 liters of cargo. A lot of its competitors offer more trunk space. The 2022 Nissan Rogue starts at $29,498 Canadian, but here in Canada, this still has the old 2.5-liter engine. In order to get the new 1.5-liter 3-cylinder, you have to move up to the SV trim, which starts at $36,098 Canadian. This top spec platinum trim costs $42,748 Canadian. As for the 2022 Mazda CX-5, it starts at $30,500 Canadian. This fully loaded signature costs $43,650 Canadian. For the money, both of these crossovers are similarly equipped, but they do trade a few blows here and there. They both have heated seats all round, heated steering wheels, though the CX-5 is only at the 9 and 3 positions, not all the way around like the Rogue. They both have surround view cameras, but the resolution looks a little bit better in the Mazda than in the Nissan. The Rogue has a larger panoramic sunroof and a 3-zone climate control. The Mazda does not have either of these, but the CX-5 does have ventilated front seats, which the Rogue doesn't have. So it's a bit of a back and forth battle between the two when it comes to gadgets. The battle continues with the infotainment systems, as they are both new. The Nissan's infotainment is displayed on a 9-inch touchscreen, while the Mazda's is displayed on a larger 10.25-inch screen. However, the Rogue's screen looks larger because it's more square than the Mazda's landscape orientation. They both allow for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration, but the Nissan allows for those apps to work wirelessly. Also, using these apps is much easier in the Rogue than in the CX-5, and that's because the Mazda doesn't have a touchscreen. Using CarPlay or Android Auto with the rotary knob is very frustrating. Both of these vehicles are also safe, as the IIHS gave them both Top Safety Pick Plus awards with good scores in every crash test category. However, in an updated and slightly more difficult side impact test, the Rogue received a revised acceptable grade, whereas the CX-5 received a good grade. These compact SUVs also come equipped with a lot of advanced safety and driver aids. However, the driver aids, such as lane centering system, seem to work better in the Rogue than in the Mazda. So last time out I said that the Mazda CX-5 was the SUV to get. Is it the same for the 2022 model year? Well, I can't believe that I'm saying this, but no. There is a little bit of an asterisk on that no, and that's because if you don't have the budget for a higher spec trim like this Platinum or the Signature, and you can only afford the base models, then the Mazda CX-5 is still the one to go for, because the 2.5 liter engine in the Rogue is just way too underpowered and it'll just frustrate you, at least for the Canadian market. In the United States, you don't have that engine anymore, like I said earlier in the video. Also, if you want a more enjoyable driving experience, then Mazda CX-5 is still the one to go for, no matter what trim level. But if you do have the budget for a higher trim level, then overall the Nissan Rogue is better. It's more spacious, it's very comfortable, it's got a lot of gadgets. This new engine is fantastic. It's way better than the old 2.5, and the Rogue is a little bit cheaper than the Mazda CX-5. Not by much, but it can make a little bit of a difference. So again, I can't believe that I'm saying this, but the Rogue is the one to go for. Now, that's just my opinion. You do not have to agree with it. It's totally fine if you don't. Anyway, if you want to know more about the 2022 Nissan Rogue or the 2022 Mazda CX-5, I wrote more detailed reviews of them over on my website. You can find those links in the video description or click on the pop-up banners right up here. One's going to follow after the other one. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck or most likely another SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.